next story is about remarks made by the US ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti. He spoke about how the US allowed India to buy Russian oil to ensure that the prices did not go up globally. Our next report telling you more about what he said and why his statement has left behind a series of questions.
US Ambassador to India Eric Garcetti has claimed the US had allowed India to buy Russian oil. He said that they allowed the purchase to take place to ensure the prices did not go up globally. Global oil prices did not shoot up, and India delivered on that. His statement has triggered a series of question marks. First, let's get you some context. After the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, India continued to buy crude oil from Russia, but it was condemned by the US for doing so. In the aftermath of the war, the US urged countries, including India, to decrease their reliance on Russian energy sources. In fact, the then US Deputy NSA, Dalip Singh, had even issued warnings during his visit to Delhi. He cautioned against the consequences of increasing Russian energy imports in 2022. The White House explicitly advised India against expanding its purchases of Russian oil. However, India has been very clear about its stance. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar acknowledged the pressure exerted on India, highlighting the potential economic repercussions of complying with these directives. He emphasized that yielding to such pressure would have led to a significant increase in petrol prices, and this could have adversely affected consumers. In fact, in February this year, the External Affairs Minister reaffirmed India's stance on buying Russian oil despite sanctions on Moscow amid military conflict with Ukraine. During his visit to Germany for the Munich Security Conference, the minister stated that Europe should understand that India cannot have a view of Russia that is identical to the European one. India's strategy of continuing to buy cheap oil from Russia despite Western pressures against these purchases has paid off. And how? It has resulted in the saving of around $7.9 billion in the country's oil import bill during the first 11 months of the fiscal year 2022-2023. It has also helped the country lower its current account deficit. On Monday, a move by the United States soon started making headlines. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, signed into law a ban on Russian enriched uranium. This move was aimed at disrupting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The ban on imports of the fuel for nuclear power plants begins in about 90 days. But here's the catch. It allows the Department of Energy to issue waivers in case of supply concerns up until 2028. The Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act is aimed at reducing and ultimately eliminating America's reliance on Russia for civilian nuclear power. But what was the US doing for 2 years? Why did it take them all this while to make this move? Why the delay in banning Russian uranium? According to US Energy Department data, Russia provided almost a quarter of the enriched uranium used to fuel America's fleet of more than 90 commercial reactors, making it the #1 foreign supplier. Those sales provided an estimated $1 billion a year to Russia. Replacing that supply could be a major challenge. It also risks raising the costs of enriched uranium by about 20%. Will the move boomerang? And while the ban is finally in place after a long delay, will waivers be issued? Time will tell. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Why are the young in Pakistan killing themselves? This is not a rhetorical question. I have with me numbers that will leave you stunned. Mental health experts in Pakistan say 50 to 55 people are dying by suicide daily. Let me repeat that. 50 to 55 people are dying by suicide in Pakistan every day. Of them, 70% are aged 15 to 29. These are young people we are talking about, young people who are killing themselves. These grim numbers were shared during a recent mental health meet in Islamabad, and they force us to ask, what is really happening in Pakistan? Why are the young in Pakistan killing themselves? Are they feeling hopeless given the state of affairs in Pakistan? Is there a link between these numbers and the lack of opportunities in Pakistan? Mental health experts are pointing to a range of reasons. 1, academic pressure. 2, lack of economic opportunities. 3, cyberbullying. 4, social media addiction. 5, substance abuse. What's the result? 50 to 55 daily suicides. 55 multiplied by 365 is 20,000 plus. Even if you consider this a ballpark figure, it's huge. And it's also a sign of societal failure, the failure of the government of Pakistan. Who else do you blame for the lack of economic opportunity? Pakistan has the money to buy submarines and warplanes from China, but it does not have the money to give its youth access to quality education. How does that work? Who do you blame for the fact? And who do you blame for Pakistan's failure? That such is the dire state of Pakistan that today the country's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is unveiling plans to sell most state-owned firms. In fact, speaking earlier today, Sharif said all of the state-owned enterprises will be privatized. Previously, then Prime Minister Imran Khan was selling government-owned helicopters, bulletproof jeeps, BMWs in order to fill the government coffers. All of this, and Pakistan is still struggling with a high fiscal shortfall combined with a huge external financial gap. Today, Pakistan barely has any foreign reserves. There are barely any foreign companies in Pakistan. No one is opening offices or offering jobs. Who is to be blamed? Look at this. In this page, the government of the UK lists out reasons why UK business should not operate in Pakistan. Let me read out some of the portions for you. The military plays a large role in strategic decisions in Pakistan. From January 2022 to June 2023, the value of the Pakistani rupee depreciated over 62% against the US dollar. There remain serious human rights concerns and violations in Pakistan, including restriction on civic space and freedom of expression and open discrimination towards some minorities. And now have a look at this line. Terrorists are very likely to try to carry out attacks in Pakistan. There is a high threat of terrorism and sectarian violence throughout the country, including the major cities of Islamabad, Rawalpindi, Lahore and Karachi. Quote unquote. Where is the lie? For decades, Pakistan has courted terrorists, given them safe haven. Pakistani policies are the reason today the country's economy has hit rock bottom. But as the leaders and the military stay insulated from the crisis in their mansions, the youth seem to be paying the price with their careers and future. During a recent meeting on mental health in Islamabad, one expert pointed how in a country like Pakistan, up to 90% of the young people's mental health needs are unmet because of lack of resources. And what's the result? Youngsters are more stressed. They feel more hopeless, more anxious, depressed. And during the same meeting, another expert questioned how the young in Pakistan could be mentally healthy when they are suffering physically. According to this expert, 40% of Pakistan's children are malnourished. Reports say in 2019, 19,331 suicide cases were reported in Pakistan. The operative word here is reported. Remember, this is Pakistan we are talking about. A lot here goes underreported. 19,000 is a conservative number. The World Health Organization estimates that for every suicide, there are 10 to 20 acts of self-harm. And by that ratio, there could be up to 300,000 acts of self-harm in Pakistan annually. Let me repeat that. There could be up to 300,000 acts of self-harm in Pakistan annually. While some are being forced to resort to self-harm, some Pakistanis are running away from the depression that is Pakistan. Pakistan International Airlines, or PIA, is one of the state-owned enterprises that Shehbaz Sharif is trying to sell off. Many of PIA's cabin crew members have gone missing upon landing abroad. They check into the hotel with the rest of their colleagues, but they fail to report to the return flight to Pakistan. There have been numerous such cases in recent years. Some cabin crew members have even applied for asylum in Canada. Such is the situation that the PIA has reportedly confiscated passports of its crew. After immigration, the airline has reportedly also asked hotel staff to keep an eye on the staff. You see, that is how desperate the situation really is. That's how desperate the state of Pakistan is. So would you really blame those who are being forced to take their lives in Pakistan? The country has not really left them with much choice. We have been talking about Ukraine, also about Gaza, all the regions where the war is likely to spill. But there is one war that has been conveniently forgotten by the world, the one being fought in Darfur. While there is a long history of conflict there, a civil war has been raging in the Sudanese region for the last 1 year. Yet the West's attention is elsewhere. So tonight on Gravitas, we shift our focus towards the forgotten war. Let's start with the basics. Darfur is the westernmost province of Sudan. This is where it lies on a map. The country's population is dominated by Muslims who are ethnically Arab. The same applies to Darfur. However, it is also home to approximately 80 tribes and ethnic groups, and that is where the conflict stems from, at least a part of it. The rest is because of the political power tussle. Darfur is stuck in a deadly power struggle between two armed forces, the Sudanese armed forces, which ousted the former president in a coup in 2019, and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces. Last year in April, a civil war broke out between the two groups. As they continue to fight for dominance, they have pulled the entire country into terror with them. A recent report by the Human Rights Watch has revealed horrific details of a brutal ethnic cleansing, sexual violence, torture, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. And which groups are being targeted? Basically, anyone who is not an Arab. This includes Masalit and Zaghawa ethnic groups. They are mostly African farmers. These communities have historically been marginalized and excluded from political authority. The roots of the conflict run deep. While the ethnic differences had been there for decades, things boiled over in 2003. A rebellion erupted. The non-Arabic minorities were frustrated with the marginalization. They demanded greater autonomy and a fair share of resources. The Sudanese government was commanded by the president, Omar al-Bashir, at that time. Instead of addressing the issues, his establishment pursued a ruthless, violent campaign against the Masalit and Zaghawa communities. Some 300,000 people lost their lives, millions were displaced, 400,000 of them were forced to flee to camps in neighboring Chad. And since then, the conflict has continued with intermittent periods of reduced violence, but things took a turn in April 2023. The UN report focuses on the months following the beginning of the war, primarily in the city of El Geneina and the suburb Ardamata. These regions have large Masalit populations. The RSF, along with Arab militias, engaged in a campaign to marginalize the Masalits and seize political power from the group. According to the report, it has targeted community and political leaders, teachers, lawyers, human rights defenders, and religious figures, allegedly kidnapped and killed the Masalit governor of West Darfur. An estimated 10,000 to 15,000 people were killed in El Geneina alone last year. About 9 million residents have been displaced. The details are gory. Parents were killed in front of their children. As they cried for help, the children died too. Panic-stricken people fleeing attacks became moving targets. Entire communities were set ablaze and destroyed. Dislocation, hunger, and thirst have followed. People have been forced to eat grass and peanut shells. Aid agencies say 25 million people are in need of urgent assistance. After all this horror, the Darfur war has managed to catch only a handful of headlines. That too only because of the Human Rights Watch report. Even though it has largely been ignored, the war is not over by any means. And there are fears that what happened in El Geneina last year is about to happen again. The city is on the precipice of a large-scale massacre. The US ambassador to the UN recently warned, will the world leaders take note of the question? Will they intervene? Or are they too occupied with Europe and West Asia?